Yeah, I think it's time we talk in depth about FNAF World. This is frankly one of the most lore-confusing games in the entire franchise, and that's saying something because FNAF AR exists. When it first came out, it was bad and confusing. Then when it was re-released after the backlash, it was really fun and confusing. Is this a retelling of Happiest Day? Is this just FNAF's version of the afterlife? Has it even happened in the timeline yet? That's what we're going to try and figure out today. So slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a theory. But before we get started, I'm happy to say that today marks the first sponsored video on the channel by the lovely folks over at the Morgan & Morgan Injury Law Firm. We'll get more into them later in the video. So for now, let's gather our ingredients. What actually happens in FNAF World? When booting up for the first time, you're greeted by this screen and the words, "Everything that happens out there has an effect here. Do you understand? This is a safe place. This is a sanctuary. But something has gone wrong, and now it can be seen here. Something went very wrong. That's why I'm here. But I won't let the same happen to you. I will put you back together." And suddenly, the game begins. Playing the game completely normally, you journey throughout the several lands of FNAF World, going through glitches and defeating bosses, eventually tackling the security system of the game to fix whatever error was in the code. And then you receive an ending. Now, the key here is that you receive an ending of several. Most of them are frankly just fun challenges and Easter eggs, but a few of the endings here really delve into the lore of the game, and those are the endings we'll be talking about today. 4 of them, to be specific. The simpler 2 endings to receive are the 4th glitch and the drowning ending. In FNAF World, you're directed to travel through glitches to get past impassable obstacles, but never to go too deep, as you may not be able to return. Well, going too deep is almost impossible, unless you go through a very specific sequence of events, finally able to go 4 glitches down and get stuck by this lake and a guy fishing there. He lets you know that he's old man consequences, and basically congratulates you on getting yourself stuck. The end plays and you get the ending for the 4th glitch. However, if you instead force your way deep enough into the lake, you glitch out of bounds once again, and are greeted with this image, giving you the drowning ending. What this means is heavily interpretive. Some people see it as an angel with wings, some people see it as a father with his arms on the backs of his 2 kids. It's hard to say, but maybe later on we can figure that out. The 3rd lore-heavy ending can be found in the Halloween update. This update added a lot of playable minigames, as well as the creator of those minigames, this guy at a desk. If you beat all of them in a specific sequence and then fight a secret boss, then visit him again, you get this ending. He lets us know that he's created something called Baby, that it's too late to stop her, and then suddenly he's found dead after some glowing eyes say,
"The show will begin momentarily. Everyone, please stay in your seats."
This feels pretty directly hinting towards Sister Location, and the game came out before Sister Location, the update right before it, so this feels like it's mostly just a way to hype up the game. But if so, who the hell is this guy? We'll get into that later too. Finally, the most intensive ending to get, the clock ending. Whenever you receive direction from Fredbear in this game, if you wait around long enough on the last text box, this happens. This glitched version of Fredbear directs you to, instead of completing the main story, seek out the clocks hidden throughout the game. Each time you do, you complete a very simple, arbitrary task. If you're all done and you unlock the last hidden area, you receive this cutscene and the game ends. Seemingly very related to the opening cutscene of FNAF World, this ending, along with this cutscene, feels like the main plot of the actual game. At least the main hidden lore of it. The question now becomes, well, what is that story about? Or, more accurately, the real question is, Rye, why the hell do you want to try to tackle this incredibly lore-messy game? Well, frankly, it wasn't technically my choice, because actually the wonderful channel members voted for it. I hosted a members-only poll for a few options for the next video, and overwhelmingly they voted for this one. So, here you go. I don't really advertise the membership much because I feel as though I don't provide enough for it. You do get a few bonus videos and posts like that occasionally, but it's not necessary. Don't feel like you have to, but thank you everyone, to the channel members, for the input and for the support. It means the world. And anyone who doesn't want to or can't, just thank you for being here. Really, it means a lot. Anyways, let's mix our ingredients together and see what kind of theories come out of it. I think it makes the most sense to tackle the non-clock endings first, as they have a few different interpretations that we can touch on, and hopefully when we tackle the clock ending, it can point us to one of those interpretations we figured out, and frankly, vice versa. The desk ending is both incredibly straightforward and incredibly confusing. Immediately, the bulk of this makes sense. Obviously, we're hinting towards Sister Location, obviously Baby means Circus Baby, and obviously Circus Baby baby killed her creator. What? Now, okay, we don't technically know exactly who created the fun times. Like, sure, we're pretty sure it's William Afton because of the opening cutscene of Sister Location. However, Henry also alludes to the fact that he possibly made the fun times in FNAF 6. So not only are we not exactly clear on who would have made Baby, in either case, they should be alive. If the show's about to begin, supposedly we're not at Sister Location yet. Like, Sister Location hasn't happened. And both William and Henry are either alive before Sister Location in the case of Henry, or die in a back room via a springlock suit like William Afton. Not by the hands of Circus Baby at a desk. We don't know anybody who would simultaneously be the creator of Circus Baby and be killed by Circus Baby at a desk. I'm sorry, am I getting too heated? This lore is very confusing. Even more confusing to all of this, the person also says they're the creator of all the mini games we're playing, because he said, "You broke my games." Some people interpret this as Scott venting his frustrations that the fans are breaking through his games and this has already gone too far and it's going to enwrap him, but that feels out of character for Scott, like as a person. When something goes wrong in FNAF, Scott usually, oh, did you want to turn around or are you leaving me? Turn around? Love me? Is this really how you want to cuddle? Okay. No, you can't nuzzle the microphone. Well, if something goes wrong in FNAF, Scott usually tells us directly in a Reddit post or something, not esoterically in a video game that he knows we pick apart. This doesn't feel like Scott. This feels like a character we either haven't met or just a cool Easter egg that shows off the new game coming out. Although, on the bright side, either way, this doesn't really affect FNAF World, because this does feel like a separate thing to hype up Sister Location. I'm sure I could make a whole video trying to figure out who that guy is, but for now, we'll just say it's Desk Guy and move on. Now, onto the glitch endings. If you speak with this seemingly random fisherman in the deepest of 4 glitches, you're greeted with this dialogue. "I'm sorry to say that you may have gone too deep into the code. There's no way back out. My name is Old Man Consequences. Come have a seat and let's fish for a while. You have nowhere else to go. The end." At which the text box doesn't close, and while you can move around a little bit, you can't actually leave that spot. You have to close the game. You went too deep. And that gives you the first of the 2 endings that you can get at this lake. Now, on a surface level, OMC just feels like a fun way for the game to show you that you went too deep. It's a little hidden Easter egg. And honestly, that might be it. It's possible that if FNAF World is a real game in universe, OMC is the built-in function to stop the player from actually breaking the game, and it just catches you when you go too deep and tells you to close the game and reopen it to reload back at your last save. Especially because, while this does end the game, there's extra hidden lore here that doesn't feel intentional to the actual in-universe game if it exists, and that's if you glitch your way into the lake, going even deeper to a 5th glitch, falling out of the world like you do in many games when you go out of bounds, and going across this image. Again, just like Desk Guy, I hesitate to go along with the interpretation that this is a Scott self-insert. Some say that this is Scott and his, at the time, 2 children. But again, Scott knows that we dig into these games to get every little lore detail. So giving a shout out to his kids in a way that could be interpreted as lore feels too messy. He knows we'll see this differently. So I feel like it either has to be that Angel interpretation, or who knows, maybe at this point it's William and Elizabeth and Michael, because most likely we're dealing with Evan here, and we'll get into that. Or sorry, the crying child. Or maybe this is post-Springlock, and this is the soul of William Afton greeting the soul of his crying child and Elizabeth, but it's hard to tell. But that is more plausible than Scott. When talking about the clock endings, right away there are alarm bells ringing for the Happiest Day minigames of FNAF 3. After all, the tasks we have to perform are changed versions of the ways in which we access the Happiest Day minigames within FNAF 3. In FNAF 3, we click on the cupcakes on the cameras. FNAF World, we walk on them. In FNAF 3, we click on a rectangular poster of Balloon Boy. FNAF World, we put Balloon Boy in a rectangle. Arcade buttons, 4 buttons. Keypad, code. Shadow Bonnie, bunny. It all lines up. This is as direct as we get in this franchise. We are completing the steps that we did in FNAF 3 to access those Happiest Day minigames. The question becomes, why would a whole game be about that? We already did Happiest Day in FNAF 3. Why would we do it a second time? Did we actually do it a second time? Or is this a retelling? Typically, in a story, if something is repeated, it's either to emphasize it, to clarify it, or to retcon it. I don't think it's being retconned because it's very one-to-one, and I don't think it's meant to emphasize. Well, Well, maybe. I think we're clarifying. I think FNAF World is attempting to give us more information about the FNAF 3 Happiest Day minigame and explain some things that go unexplained in FNAF 4. After all, Happiest Day is hard to decipher. I mean, what was some of this? I still don't understand the Cupcake Room, or why Shadow Bonnie is here. It's really odd. So what does FNAF World tell us about the Happiest Day minigame that FNAF 3 doesn't? Well, I think it's getting more explicit about who the Happiest Day is for. Look at the beginning and the end of the game again. Look familiar? If you know some lore about FNAF 4, it should. This dialogue and presentation echoes the ending cutscene of FNAF 4, where the Fredbear plush promises the crying child that we are still your friends and that we'll put him back together. This takes place right after the bite of 1983, wherein the crying child is lifted off the ground and put in the moving mouth of Fredbear, and due to the poor build quality of the animatronic and lack of safety measures around him, an accident occurs that ends up sending the crying child into a coma and later killing him. This was a tragic event, and I'm sure his family was hit very hard with it. Financially, it could have put them into ruin, although they could have been better off if they had better representation legally by today's sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. When it comes to legal representation, size matters. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest accident injury law firm, with over 800 attorneys in 49 states. Wherever Fredbear Family's diner was, if it's in America, Morgan & Morgan could have helped this family get better representation, not just with a lawyer either, but with a dedicated legal team of case investigators, paralegals, and customer care specialists that would have helped to maximize their settlement. Possibly up to 3 times as much, as it's been shown that hiring a law firm can up your settlement by 3 times. Many may see the bite of 83 as a tragic accident, but in truth, there are no accidents. If you've been hurt, it's the result of negligence. In this case, negligence of Fazbear Entertainment. And regardless of their financial situation, the Aftons could have consulted with Morgan & Morgan, because their fee is free, and you don't pay unless you win. The Afton family could have checked out Morgan & Morgan, but you still can. Simply dial #law on your cell phone or visit the custom link in the description to get into contact with their amazing team. Thanks again to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's video. Morgan & Morgan, for the people. Alright, now back to the theory. So, going over the interpretations and the endings of this game, we have a recreation of the Happiest Day minigames, a callback to the FNAF 4 ending cutscene, with possible mentions of Henry or William or someone dying at the hands of Circus Baby. And maybe an angel? What is FNAF World trying to say? Well, I think a couple things. First off, in the original Happiest Day minigame, we don't know who it's for. We just see this crying kid. And sure, we can assume it's FNAF 4 because crying child, but it's not clear. For one, a good chunk of the community thinks that the Happiest Day is actually for Cassidy, mainly because of this picture from the security logbook, in which we see a puppet giving cake to a kid, like this puppet gave cake to this kid. Admittedly, I do see it. However, I think FNAF World is explicitly trying to tell us that Happiest Day is about the FNAF 4 crying child. This game seems to be attempting to give us more information on why and how the Happiest Day came to be, even when. This is given away by the fact that the final cutscene doesn't mention that any goal has been achieved, or that a child has come back or moved on. The line we see are "the pieces are in place, now rest." We're not completing the Happiest Day via FNAF World. We're helping to make it happen. There's one key question that's still lingering though. Who's doing this? Who's the player? And in answering that, when is this happening? Now, we're going to tread some pretty speculative waters here, but we have to, because honestly at this point, we've got all the information we can get, now we have to piece it together in the most logically and narratively satisfying way. So who could be behind this? As far as we're aware, there's 2 movers and shakers in the FNAF afterlife. The FNAFterlife, if you will. First, Charlotte, Henry Emily's daughter, the Shepherd of Lost Souls, and currently possessing the marionette. Second, Cassidy, the one you should not have killed, the vengeful spirit, and currently possessing Golden Freddy, or Fredbear. As we play the Happiest Day minigames of FNAF 3, it seems fairly likely that Charlotte is the one orchestrating it. As in the last minigame, we play as a child wearing a puppet mask, she places the last cake, and she is the one that typically gives gifts and gives life. And that's pretty one-to-one. One question though, how did they arrange this? How is the game already glitched enough that they can interact with it? And how did the crying child get there? This is where I think Cassidy and FNAF World comes into play. How? Well, let's pop our mixture into the oven and see what kind of horrors rise. In FNAF 3, we play as Michael Afton, guarding the haunted house attraction, Fazbear Frights. During the nights, we as the player do simple tasks in order to unlock minigames, eventually leading to the happiest day. But what is actually happening here? Surely Michael isn't touching posters through cameras or punching wall tiles like a keypad. I think FNAF World is trying to tell us that Michael is actually doing these actions, but not in the way we play them in FNAF 3. I think FNAF World is saying that when all the FNAF memorabilia is here, Charlie finds all the souls in one place, as well as the crying child, stuck. They can help him, but they need to get to him and set up an area to help him in. This is where Cassidy comes in. I believe that FNAF World is an actual in-universe game that is present somewhere in Fazbear Frights. Just like the several other arcade machines here, Cassidy is trying to make changes and affect this game to help Charlie and the others assist the crying child, but they need human input. They need a player. Cassidy reaches out to Michael through this copy of FNAF World and directs him on where to go and what to do. When we as a player are doing weird environmental interactions to access the Happiest Day minigames in FNAF 3, the actual thing that's happening is Michael setting the clocks within FNAF World. FNAF World isn't rewriting or retelling the Happiest Day minigames. It's retelling how Michael interacts with the environment within FNAF 3. This gives us an actual reason and method for Michael to assist in the passing on or indoctrination of his younger brother. He may have caused him to die, but at least now, he can help him instead. I know this is pretty out there for an interpretation, but frankly, most interpretations of FNAF World are. In case it got confusing as I really got into the weeds, the TLDW of this entire video is I think FNAF World is showing us what Michael Afton does in FNAF 3 to allow the Happiest Day minigame to occur, therefore implying that Happiest Day happens during FNAF 3 and not actually by pressing the tiles on the wall. Now, keep in mind, this also hinges on the fact that we know exactly who and what the Happiest Day minigame is, which is fairly up to interpretation, which you can see I go into in this video. Once again, thanks Morgan & Morgan Injury Law Firm for sponsoring today's video, and as always, a huge shout out to the best patrons, the Toasted Slices, Emberisk, Zenith, Tommy Woodchard, Raven Eris, Stormachow, Charlie Bean, Lovey Puppy, Anvil Pro 100, and Just BKZ. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, Slices.